1940s to 1903, the downtown, the historic Milwaukie neighborhood is what it's called today, but basically downtown and where the Waverly Country Club is, sort of along the river that way, that was Milwaukie. Other parts of the city would be annexed in, here we go, as we moved along, but the original was downtown and now it goes moving out. Yes, question in the back.
How did they pick the name Milwaukie?
Good question. There are several theories. We know for certain that our town founder, Lot Whitcomb, was born in Vermont, served in the Illinois legislature, and at some point passed through Wisconsin. And the town, city of Milwaukie, Wisconsin, was actually settled, founded about the same time in the 1840s. And whatever struck his fancy, he thought that was pretty cool. So when he arrived in Oregon in 1847, he said, let's stay in Milwaukee. And we went along with it, and so that's where we got our name. We are named after the other Milwaukie, which is a Potawatomi Indian word for gathering place or council place or meeting place by the water. So it's still pretty applicable to where we are here in Lem.
But somebody didn't know how to spell.
But the spelling, yes. Well, I will say in the 19th century, they were not sticklers for how to spell things consistently. And there are all kinds of stories about why we ended up with K-I-E at the end and they stuck with K-E-E at the end. I tend to believe the story that the political, in Milwaukie, Wisconsin, they had a healthy two-party system. And if the Democrats were in charge, it was K-I-E. And if the Republicans were in charge, it was K-E. The Whigs before the Republicans. So it would alternate. And in the 19th century, they didn't really care much for spell check, right? So I assume that when Lot Whitcomb went through that town, the K-I-E was popular there. He stuck it here, and that's sort of what stuck. I've heard theories that the post office made the decision because when they're trying to sort mail, K-I-E goes west and K-E-E goes east, or
Yeah, because there were no zip codes back then.
there were zip codes. And there are two incorporated cities of Milwaukie in the United States, but there are actually 4 communities that call themselves Milwaukie. Oregon, of course, being the most important, and then Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that other little town, and then 2 unincorporated areas outside Scranton, Pennsylvania. There's a Milwaukie, Pennsylvania, and outside near the Virginia border in northern North Carolina, there's an unincorporated Milwaukie too. All those ones say K-E-E. We're the only K-I-E. So I think it was an accident of who was in charge of the Wisconsin town and Lot Whitcomb went through, and then just sort of 19th century spelling and not being super consistent is how it went with K-I-E. Agree.
Wasn't the railroad also using K-E-E?
Undoubtedly, sure. When they put up their signs for their stops, they would put signs up and it said K-I-E. Although I think I've seen railroad signs that said E-E too. I mean, we kind of played with E-E a little bit in the 19th century as well, but by the time 1903 rolled around and the state acted to incorporate Milwaukie, it was I-E, and we've stuck with that since. So it's a fun little question. So I dived into the city history, and I forgot that I have another opening slide. Talk about my role and who I am here at the city and the legacy that I continue. I'm what's called a city recorder, and in Oregon we're called city recorders because in Indiana they were called city recorders, and in the 1800s when we were adopting it, most of the places were called city clerks. And we kind of do variations on the same thing, but here in Milwaukie, Oregon, I am clerk of the city council, which means all things city council meetings and logistics and agendas and minutes and notices and videos and all that great stuff. I'm also the elections officer, which is not a big job here in Oregon because luckily our counties run elections, but in years where our council runs for office, I help the candidates file their paperwork and I certify that they're eligible. To be eligible to run for city council in Milwaukie, you have to have lived in city limits for 6 months before the election, and you have to be a registered voter. It's a fairly low threshold. I'm also the supervisor of the municipal court. I've been doing that for like 3.5 years, and I still would call myself anything of an expert. We are very fortunate in Milwaukie to have a really expert, seasoned court clerk, Mary, who runs that operation, but I supervise those. And then I supervise our city hall front desk. And then the reason I get to tell the history is because I'm the city's records manager. And I have most active on Facebook. So I don't know if anyone follows Mary Lisa Bailey on Facebook. That's her personal account. Now, if she says something about city policy and a discussion ensues and somebody asks for that information, if it's city-related business, then an interpretation of the law says, yeah, I'm kind of responsible for that and have to go work with her to find it. And there have been stories already in our really, we're still in the early days of AI and social media, really. There have been stories where some cities have been burned pretty badly when they couldn't produce that kind of information. So there have been nights that's it's kept me up at night, but I'm getting more, I hope it's not just numb, but it is what it is. And I rely on our mayor to make good decisions about what she decides to post on social media. And hopefully I don't have to take charge of it. But yeah, it does. Any city-related, the definition of a public record is anything, any medium, email, digital, paper, any medium of information that has to do with city business is a public record. And there's a whole schedule of state law about how long you have to keep it. I think it's,
So,
yes.
does it, you have to approve everything?
Approved? No.
Oh, okay.
Just responsible for the maintenance of it for the required amount of time that the state law sets for that type of record, and then providing it to internal, like if somebody at the city needs that information, or if there's a public records request that comes in.
So, this doesn't maybe affect you, Scott, but who oversees the comptroller of the city?
In Oregon, we don't have a lot of comptrollers in Oregon. We call them finance directors for most cities, and that's our city manager. One of the slides I'll get to probably at a future session is the org chart, the city's organizational structure. And in a quick snapshot for today, there's the voters that elect the 5-person city council, and then the city council hires 3 people. They hire the city attorney, the municipal court judge, and the city manager. The judge and the attorney don't have any employees or reports to them, but all the staff of the city report through the chain of command to the city manager. So the city manager is the direct supervisor of our finance director. And
Literally, right as you want to change the slide, I run into internet issues.
Alright, so I'm the city reporter, that's what I do. The pictures of people along the bottom of this
Previous slide?
my predecessors. The very first one is a guy named Jess Keck, who's sort of a jack of all trades character. He was, back in the day, the city recorder position was elected. And he was the first guy to be elected in 1903 to be city recorder. He would last maybe half a term before he was elected town marshal. And he traded his pen for a badge and a gun, which he provided for himself. And then there was a whole host of other people that served as city recorder. I think I'm the 24th city recorder in the city's history. But there's one person that was standing above the others, if you noticed, and that person's name I love to talk about, Nell. Nell Martin was Mrs. Milwaukie. She was our recorder. She was the last elected recorder in 1940. And then there was a charter change that I'll talk about at some point. And she became the first appointed city recorder, and she would serve on the job until she passed, giving a history lesson to local school children. But these are just some of the other folks that have served as city recorder in the days after Nell. And then I had the good privilege of working for 3 years, being mentored by Pat Duvall, the second to the end there. She was a recorder for 32 years, and she retired in 2016, and then I was in city recorder, and it was a great privilege to get to work with her. And the amount of change that she saw from when she got to the city in the 80s, and everything was strictly paper-based, to she led us into a digital archive system that we run, that we use, that the state actually manages. It's just incredible the amount of change she oversaw, and I was very, 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 very fortunate to spend 3 years with her.
Who's the woman to the left of her?
That is Dorothy Farrell. She was city clerk, city recorder in the late 70s and the 80s. And I think that was Barbara Watson next to her, and then Paul Melton, and Ari Osborne, and then Nell, and then Jess. And there were some other characters.
She looks
I'm
familiar.
impressed that you know all those names.
Yeah.
I am too, because this morning I was totally blanking on the 2 next. Dorothy Farrell and Barbara Watson. Anyway, next.
Oh, yes.
next up.
Yes, handwritten.
So now I'm going to dive back into it. I kind of started it when I was rambling earlier. So city history as of incorporation. 1903, we got together because we wanted sidewalks We also wanted sewers. So in that order, I suppose, the city council got tours. The picture in the top right, are members of the first and second city council. The gentleman in the middle with the pocket watch and the voter, that's Mayor Schindler. He was mayor from 1901 to 1909. Our second mayor was the guy on the far left, William Philip Street. He was a banker. And then there's some other characters in there. And then Jess Keck, the guy who was the first recorder and then became town marshal. He's the guy with the hat kind of cocked back. And you can see a badge sticking out right above the
Yeah.
seal. That's Jess Keck. So that was the founding crew. We have the minutes from the first meeting on June 2nd, 1903.